I want to thank everyone who has shown up. I know we have a small group here today, but that's okay. We are recording this session today, so it'll be available to the rest of the people who registered. But I want to thank you today for joining us for this last session of the Award Lifecycle series. And we're going to be focusing today on award management, which we'll be talking mainly about financial and programmatic management. And we're going to be focusing mainly on federal funding today, which is because here at the university, the vast majority of the funding that we receive comes from federal sources. So that is the reason why we have a tendency to focus on federal. My name is Shannon Irie. I am a training and information coordinator at the Office of Sponsored Programs. And Kim?
I am Kim Melville-Smith. I'm the Director of Post-Award, as well as the Assistant Director for the Office of Sponsored Programs.
Okay, so our agenda today is here on the screen, and we're going to talk a little bit about what is the award lifecycle. We're going to talk a bit about roles and responsibilities. We're going to talk about, getting ready to start spending on an account, about being a good steward, about closeout, and about changes. And again, who do we contact if something goes wrong or if we just have questions? So we're talking about the award lifecycle, and this series has been a series of 4 that we have started at the development in the very top in the dark green, and now we're ending out at the management in the orange. The award lifecycle is talking about each individual award, and we track each individual award separately. We have a separate account for it. We track the expenses separately, and each award is looked at and should be managed as a separate thing. We should not be commingling funds between accounts, and we need to look at it that way. But we're depicting it as a circle because what I want everyone to think about is that when we do things strategically, compliantly, collaboratively, and responsibly, that can lead to your next award. That one award done well can lead to the next one, and then the next one, etc. So even though we're talking about these as individual things, I want you to be thinking about that this award can actually lead to something in the future for you. We all have roles and responsibilities during this award life cycle, and it can get really confusing about who should be doing what at what stage. And so here at the Office of Sponsored Programs, and in conjunction with our partners out in the departments and colleges and units, we came up with the roles and responsibilities matrix. And this roles and responsibilities matrix can be found on our website. I do have the URL here on the slide. And we have a roles and responsibilities matrix that goes along with that award lifecycle. So at each stage of the award, from development all the way to that management piece, we have a separate roles and responsibilities matrix about the primary things that you might be faced with while either proposing for, having an award set up, and then managing it. So we have broad categories that will also then show who's responsible for this and who to contact. So that is on our website, and I think that is takes a lot of the guessing out of it. So I am going to turn this over to Kim because we're gonna start in kind of this blue area, which is before the financial and programmatic management. A little bit about the account setup, which we have covered in a session earlier, but also some team roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. So we do have a few sections laid out here, and this is really, you're going to get funded, now what? And so some of the things to consider, do you need an at-risk spending form? Do you have the award in hand, but or we know the award's coming, but we don't have it in hand yet. And so do you need to start spending? We often see this times for field campaigns. It's very common. You'll know that the award's coming. You need to start your field campaign for the summer or whatever seasonality you need. You need to get going on it. So this at-risk spending form is the mechanism here at Colorado State to initiate that, to get your account set up is so you can ready, set, and go. And then do you have subawards? If you have subawards, so we're going to move past, we have the awards here, you have your account set up, and you have subawards. So you need to make sure that you use this PI request to initiate subaward form to request getting your subawards initiated. Those are a contractual agreement that CSU makes with that subawarding agency. So it is a negotiated process. It is not just a quick, easy thing. So it takes time. And so the sooner you can get that form submitted and get the process going, the sooner your subawards can also start doing their portion of the work. Your team management. So really be thinking about how you're going to manage your team. Do you need to hire? Do you need to recruit? Who's going to assist you in carrying out the goals and objectives of your project? Have you met with your unit and departmental research administrator to plan ahead? Do you have unit or departmental research administration support? Not every unit has the same level of support, and every unit has a very distinct setup for what that support looks like. So one, if you haven't figured that out up to this point, really work to figure out what your support level is, and then meet with whomever is the appropriate person to really help you plan. Planning is part of that, the hiring, the staffing, all of those pieces to make sure your project is very successful. Shannon and I love to tease on this one. Read your award. Her and I both have historically been departmental research administrators. I would scan the award. I read more awards now in my current role than I ever did as supporting. There's so much valuable information in there that we just take for granted, that we know or we understand or something like that. So make sure you're reading your award documents. That is why we provide copies of them for you.
I'm going to say, Kim, before you go on with that one, we've been here long enough. Kim and I don't need to tell you about how many years we've both been at the university, but I've been here long enough that we didn't used to get the awards every single time. And when I first started at CSU, I got to be honest, I didn't even know there was an award. I probably went through the first year or maybe even 2 years of my being a departmental research administrator and had no idea there was an award. And when I found out that there was, and the amount of information, like Kim said, that is in there, valuable information telling us how we need to proceed. Anyways, I just had to say that things are much better. We do send the awards out to every single PI and to whoever is helping them in the unit.
And then final under that administrative piece is cost share. So when we're setting up the accounts when Office Response Programs is setting up the accounts, we are also setting up your cost share account. That cost share account still needs to be funded and staffing needs to be allocated to it. So that's part of that planning that you should be doing with your unit or departmental research support to make sure that cost share is being charged and allocated appropriately from the get-go. So that's kind of some of the administrative stuff. Some of the strategic things to be thinking about, which we've kind of covered, is pre-spending necessary allowed. Some agencies allow you to spend 90 days prior to the award start date. Others do not. So make sure you're aware of agencies' general rules. Every award is unique, but in general, terms and conditions for different agencies are fairly common. Basically what we're trying to look at is for that at-risk spending. If you account and you're charging things to it, we do that to avoid general ledger transfers and any cost transfers that might pop up. While it's completely okay and like everyone understands why it happened and what it is, it still creates an audit red flag. Those are what we call just low-hanging fruit for the auditors. It's a simple, easy document type to look at, and they can just dive right into it. So the less we have for them to look at, the better off we are. As part of your team management, really you want to set the tone early and often. What are the goals and objectives, and what is everyone's roles in that, and how are you going to accomplish that? So the PI is ultimately responsible for the project, but they may delegate some items to others. So make sure that's clear on who's doing what and who's responsible for what in order to be successful. And also, aligning the best people with the scope of work. I have a background in biology and I've done tons of lab work. It would be awful to put me on lab work right now. It's just been so long since I've done it. I will help you administratively till the son comes home, but start pipetting again, I'm out of it. It's not where I would fit the best in the scope of work. And then really on advanced planning. I mean, we've talked about it throughout the whole administrative kind of piece, just thinking ahead will help make everything smoother and easier. Nothing's perfect. We can never predict or plan for everything, but really thinking through, when is your field campaign? When is the deliverables due? When do you need what? And kind of working backwards to really think about when you need to have certain things ordered, people in place, anything along those lines. And then, as we mentioned with the award setup or read your award, understanding your terms and conditions. Again, they're generally fairly standard per agency, but that's not always true. There's oftentimes one little caveat that's included that's outside of the standard. And so just making sure you understand all that. So we want to be good stewards of this money. As Shannon mentioned, most of this conversation is about federal, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be good stewards of other money as well. For federal money, you as a taxpayer are investing in this research. It is your money that you're contributing to the greater good. And so how would you want your money spent? So really think of it as, while it's not coming directly out of your pocket, it is coming directly out of your pocket. So we want to make sure we're really good stewards of this money. So administratively, team management. What are your subawards and your collaborators and your graduate, like that whole group of people that are helping you get your scope of work done and accomplished? How are they being managed? And I have been in labs where management is really good. We all know what the common goal is. And I have management in labs where management is not great. It really does make a difference on the quality of work product when the team is managed well. Managing a team well does not mean, day-to-day like micromanaging, but really having a common shared goal and vision and understanding of who's doing what. And then again, meet with your unit department support individual often, because really it helps you understand where things are at and where you need to go, and helps communicate any changes that are happening or that your departmental person knows is happening. The university changes procedures sometimes, and it's communicated through department support staff, but not necessarily to PIs. So it could impact your work significantly or not. So it's just important to, if you're having those constant communication, that you'll stay informed on that information. Review your expenditures. And so provide adequate justification for them, as well as monitor your subaward invoices. So this kind of ties in with under the strategic there, the be kind to your future self. And it's being kind to your future self, but it's also being kind to the future university. Just as an example, we are in the midst of about 4 audits right now, and the level of information they were requesting is a little excessive in my opinion, but because we have the adequate justification and supporting documents in our system of records, our office is able to pull that information without the department really needing to be involved. So these people were kind to me. I'm going to take it personal that they did this all for me. So they've been really kind to me to make sure that we're in a good space for it. But it is ultimately the PI's responsibility to be able to say, yes, this pipette that I bought benefits the project, or, we went and did this field campaign and those costs are to get XYZ done from the scope of work. We really need to make sure that everything can be justified. I know it's at times can feel very administratively burdensome, but it is real information we need, and it is often stuff that we get questioned on.
Well, and Kim, audits don't always happen like right after you've done something. So, I mean, that's the problem. They can come back and audit us many years in the future. And I don't know about you guys, but my memory is no longer what it used to be. And I know that there was a time I was looking at things on projects and going, oh, I'll remember this. I'll remember this. You don't. You don't remember any of it after you've been involved in hundreds and hundreds of transactions. So be kind to your future self and be kind to others' future selves because it may not be you who has to go and dig out this information.
So just as a reference, audits can happen within 3 years of the project closeout. So if a project's 5 years, the closeout is usually 120 days after that 5 years, and then for another 3 years. So, I mean, we could be looking at 8 to 9 years from when that transaction occurred, when it's going to be audited. So again, just the more you document at the time, again, may seem excessive, but it really does make a difference in the long run. Another way to be a good steward is really doing timely effort certification and timely technical reports. So effort certification is the way that Colorado State University has decided to address the requirement from uniform guidance that we have a process and document that the salary charged is appropriate and correct. So there's different ways to do it, but CSU has decided to use effort certification as a percentage of effort. So those are quarterly and they need to be, again, certified timely. And if there's any questions about those, we can feel free to reach out to Shannon or myself, and we're happy to help guide you through questions on that. And then timely technical reporting. Technical reporting, agencies have historically said if your technical reports are late or not timely, they will withhold funding. That has been kind of an empty threat for many, many years. It is no longer an empty threat. And so we are seeing that more and more often now, that if you and or your colleagues do not have their technical report done timely, then new funding will not be awarded. So really, this is another part of being kind to your future self, is just get your technical reports done timely, and it ensures you and your colleagues can continue to receive funding for future awards.
And this is also from the technical, I'm sorry, Kim, but this is also, remember that this can also be for co-PIs as well. So let's say you're a co-PI on a project and your PI hasn't submitted technical reporting, and then you are submitting your own proposal. There could be a stop on there because you are a senior personnel on that project that hasn't completed its technical reporting. So
it really can have far-reaching implications. I think within our own institutions, I think we have I think we're more collegial and can really work through that. The areas that I think I've seen the biggest challenges with this is more when we're doing like collaborative proposals with other institutions. So let's say University A is the prime on this, and we're going to be a collaborative with them, and PI at University A hasn't done theirs. That whole award now is not going to be issued. So again, it's just really making sure everyone's doing their due diligence on those technical reports. And as I said, it is getting more and more scrutinized, and they really are holding true to what they've basically had empty threats for about 5-10 years. Cost allowability. Any cost that needs to be charged to an award for allowability needs to be allowable, allocable, and reasonable. So allowability, really to understand that, is this necessary and reasonable? Do you really need it? Like, I need a new iPad kind of thing. Is that really necessary? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I just like the way an iPad looks. I don't know. It needs to conform to cost principles and program terms and conditions. It needs to be permitted by law. So example, like the main example I always think of permitted by law is Schedule 1 narcotics. Like, we can get them. It's generally, I can't go to the store and buy them. I have to go through a very regulated process to get them. So it is permitted by law if I follow all the rules and regulations for that purchase. But again, it's not something I can just go to the local grocery store and pick up my Schedule 1 narcotics off the shelf. Consistently treated as a direct or indirect cost. This is at an institutional level, not at a personal level, not at a department level. This is at an institutional level. And is it adequately documented? Again, you will hear us say through pretty much this whole presentation is documentation and justification to really support this stuff. The next part is allocability. So chargeable and assignable to cost categories, incurred solely to advance the work under the sponsored agreement. And then I'm going to go through them all really quick and I'll kind of give some examples. Necessary to the overall operation of the agreement and not charged to other federal awards. So some of this is a little nebulous and a little bit harder sometimes to wrap your head around. It can be allocable in proportions to awards. So the most common thing is like I have two awards that are very similar. They both use this specialized piece of equipment. I told both sponsors I was buying this equipment. I'm splitting this equipment between the two projects to buy it because it's allocable to both. So they can be two federal awards, but you've been very clear that you're splitting the cost and that it benefits both equally. The challenge comes in if you're buying that piece of equipment on these two awards, but one award ends next month and the other one's just starting, and now you're buying this piece of equipment, trying to split it equitably 50-50 between the two awards. That's no longer allocable. That no longer falls then into reasonable. And so really it's not reasonable to assume that the life of that equipment is going to benefit project A that's only got 1 month left, the same as it's going to benefit project B that has 3 years left. So reasonable is, the definition's on here, and this is directly from Uniform Guidance to CFR 200-404. A cost is reasonable if, in its nature and amount, it does not exceed that which would be normally incurred by a prudent person under the circumstances prevailing at the time the decision of the cost was incurred. So this is more under the reasonable piece, but again, that reasonable person, prudent person, we have used that phrase many, many times. What would a prudent person think? So if a prudent person came in and looked at this allocation that you've done for this equipment in that scenario I gave you with 1 month and 3 years, and they saw you split it equally, a prudent person would be like, that doesn't make sense. And so that's kind of, Uniform Guidance uses the word prudent. You've probably heard of the sniff test, like, does it smell right? If you talk to your neighbor down the street, would that make sense to them? Really somebody that's totally disassociated from the day-to-day operations. What's reasonable to them? I think that's the best way to think about reasonableness. So it's always, my office, my team is always happy to walk you through these thought processes before you purchase, before you submit documents, before you do anything, if you're unsure of how to explain what you're doing. So all of these things, these allowable, allocable, and reasonable, help us maintain compliance or cost allowability. Anything else, Shannon?
The one thing we don't have on there is another part of being allowable is the consistency part of it. So we have to treat all costs at our university, one, consistently. And this used to be a thing. My example I always used to use previously was student fees, because we didn't used to be able to put student fees on our federal projects at all because we weren't able to put them on all of our federal projects. That's since changed. We've had some new rules around that, so that consistency piece for the university has gone away. But we also have to consistently treat like costs as either indirect costs or direct costs. So another example of consistency on that one is probably administrative salaries. So administrative salaries generally are indirect costs. So if we treat an administrative salary as an indirect cost, we can't also then treat it as a direct cost. So consistency is also part of this cost allowability.
And the administrative salaries one is always fun to me because, as you heard Shannon say, whether you all picked it up or not, I did. Generally, you'll hear us say that a lot. Generally, most likely, usually, there are situations where we can go outside of that norm. But again, it's very unique, very specific. So ask, and we're happy to help navigate that if you have questions.
How many ways can we say it depends?
Yeah.
Many ways.
So we've kind of talked about, we just finished talking about allowability and allocability and stuff. And then we have this whole order of precedence, which also really feeds into that as well. So there's the federal regulations, the sponsor's terms and conditions, the awards terms and conditions, and then institutional policies. We have them in a triangle here, kind of showing that they like stack on top of each other. these aren't necessarily the actual like flow, like federal is not always the biggest and then sponsor and award and institution. It often is the way it goes, so that federal rules are looser, sponsor terms and conditions get a little bit tighter, award terms and conditions get a little bit tighter, and institutional policies are more restrictive. That's not always the case. So at the end of the day, really the main thing with order of precedence is we have all these regulations and rules and guidelines that we are basically mixing together, and whatever's the most restrictive is the rule that we must abide by. So it could be like, I know we do have some institutional policies that are very loose and broad, and federal regulations prohibit it. So the institutional money, like our education or E&G money, would be okay to spend on some of this stuff per institutional policy, but federal money is not allowable. So again, the bottom line to this is really the order of the order of precedence is the most restrictive is what we need to follow. So again, read your sponsor award terms and conditions to understand what they are, and then understanding the related policies and guidance that our institution has. This is really where your departmental support can come in and help, because that is part of their role, is to understand the intermix of the regulations as well as institutional guidelines. And there's offices all over campus, including the Office of Sponsored Programs, that are happy to help you navigate those, because I can't say that that CSU does the best at making those easy to find sometimes. So if you know, you know, but if you don't know, sometimes it's a little bit hard to find. Effort timeline. So we've talked about earlier about the need to timely certify effort. So effort has multiple timelines. So at award, you know, you may need to hire, you may already have people on campus that you're going to allocate to this. So you'll need to go through that process. At appointment, each individual is given an IBS. So that IBS stands for institutional based salary. And that is a really important distinction, because that is the contractual amount the university has agreed to pay them. And so that feeds into a lot of other things at CSU of what can and cannot be supported by federal or sponsored activity. And then the award is set up and the proposed budget is put into our system for tracking. So then at post-award, and really post-award is basically kind of day one of spending. I mean, it's not like after the award's over, but throughout the life cycle of the spending. So effort is set up in Oracle right now, which is our HR system. And again, this is where meeting and trying to plan out and project can help. You can get that set up. And if the world is perfect, you get that set up once and you're done for the life of the project. World is never perfect, but in a dream world, that's what we would love to see. And then so you get that set up, and then adjustments to effort are made before the salary post. So let's say you had like planned on 50% of the effort for yourself to be on this project in July for your field campaign, but a monsoon, I'm terrible at weather, but a monsoon came through and wiped out your field site. Okay, well, you're not going in July. So now you need to, you know, that you're going to reduce your effort because you can't do that. So now you need to go down to 20%. It's best to do that before, as soon as you know, to make those adjustments for the spending before it posts to the account. If you can't, because life happens, and that's fine, we do have mechanisms on campus to change it after the fact. It does require a bit more work. So again, before is the best practice. And then quarterly salaries are reviewed in eCert for an after the fact review and approval by the department, or it's a effort coordinator. I forget the actual term, but it's usually a departmental support person who looks through it and goes, yep, this is what we were expecting based on my conversations with the PI, or no, this is not at all what happened. So I need to dig into figuring this out. Once the department person says, yep, this looks right, it then gets rolled over to the PI to then certify. And so when the PI is certifying, they are saying, to the best of my knowledge, as the PI on this project, Shannon worked 20% over this quarter. 20% of Shannon's time and effort were on this project. Yep, that's right. And so that certification is basically our attestation to the federal government that we have done our due diligence, we have reviewed it, and it is accurate to the best of our knowledge. And then in project reporting, all the people that worked on the project, paid or unpaid, should be included in the technical reports. And then all deliverables should also be provided in that technical report. I think one of the challenges that we often see in technical reporting is with the personnel, and that really is that if you had a student volunteer for field campaigns, are just easier for me on this. It's same for lab work, but I'm going to keep using field campaigns. Sorry, everyone. If you had a student that just wanted to come out for a day to volunteer on the field campaign because the personal growth that they wanted, one, there's a process at CSU to have them volunteer. You're on a field campaign, things happen. We need that student protected. And so there's a process at the university to do that. But two, they've helped you with your deliverable. I mean, they have helped contribute to the project. The day seems like week, but let's go with it. And so now you need to report back to this funding agency that you did have this student help. They weren't paid, and that's okay, but they did help. So that does need to be included in your technical reports as well. Okay, next slide. I feel like I'm missing something, but Shannon will keep me honest if I've totally missed something.
You're doing good.
Okay, so you're going through the life of your project, and oh my gosh, now we need to make a change. So what happens? So there's definitely, we see changes needed all the time. There's changes that need to be reviewed, and there's changes that don't need, there's changes that need to be reviewed and approved, and there's changes that don't need to be approved. These will be in your awards terms and conditions. And so again, reading those helps, but some of our really common amendment types is a change to the scope of work, subaward changes. So like, I'm going to go with scope of work. Let's say you need to take out a whole entire component because you determined it's not viable. The place you were going to do your field campaign had the monsoon and now you can't do it there anymore. And that was the only place that plant QPT lived. I mean, it's just, there's things that happen. So you just need to take out a whole piece, or you need to add a whole piece, because then you discover you're like, oh my gosh, this is no longer important. We need to redirect to here. That's a change of your scope of work. Subaward changes. So say you were working with P.I. Smith from University A, and she decided to move to University B. So you still need her and you still want her expertise, but you now are changing where your money is going for her. So you will need to request a subaward change for that. Supplements. You've asked for additional money because work's going great and you've discovered this random weird thing that you want to dive in more to because it's going to make it better. You ask for a supplement. Budget revisions. Some agencies require approval for budget revisions, some do not. So again, if you need to make a budget revision, you must read your terms and conditions, or talk to your sponsored programs team prior to making any changes. Carry forward often is another amendment type. Change in senior or key personnel. Let's stick with Dr. Smith has moved to was at CSU and now has moved to institution C. If we're not going to subaward for them and she was a key personnel, we need to request permission to remove her and replace her if you need to, or just remove her. Either way requires permission. A change in cost share. If let's say we're going to do 100,000 and now we only are going to do 1,000 in cost share, we need to make sure we have that documented and reported with the agency. Changes in subaward. Again, sorry, we have this on here twice, but they actually are two separate things. So changes in subaward can come in many different ways. Like they need to change their budget or something on those actions. We may have the authority to approve it, but they're checking with their sponsor, which is us, to make those changes. No cost extension, very common request. We just need more time to complete the work. We don't need any more money. We just need some more time. And then a reduction of senior personnel efforts, where the senior personnel is either disengaging from the project or taking a break from the project. In general, a reduction of 25% or more from the budgeted effort needs to have prior approval. Or a break of 3 months or more is another common one. So given Colorado's parental leave laws and stuff, pretty much any senior or key personnel on parental leave will need to have prior approval from a federal agency for that disengagement. because it's usually exceeds 3 months. So under this kind of that strategic side, ask before making changes. Don't assume you can just do stuff, even if you're like read the terms and conditions and you are just feel like you're an expert at terms and conditions. Just double check with your sponsored programs team to confirm. Know whom should be making the request. Know who should be making the request and to whom. We have the next slide kind of goes through more details on that. Know who can make changes and who cannot. Again, don't assume. Again, communicate with us, and any correspondences you get from your sponsor that your sponsored programs team was not part of, please make sure you forward that on. There are nuances in communications that our office is very attuned to that may not seem that big of a deal to we'll go with the prudent person, the lay person, but it really does indicate very specific things for our office. So I think,
and don't assume that we get the same communication that you do. I think a lot of times you'll get something from your sponsor and you'll just say, oh, well, I'm sure that they also copied, sponsored programs on this. That is, I'm going to even say mostly not the case. A lot of times I have no idea. Our sponsors are not great a lot of times of communicating to the right people, the right information. You would think that they would be, but they are not. So don't assume that.
One more thing on this page really quick is there is a link to the no cost extension form that we have, but we have some new forms that are coming online pretty regularly. So there is a link in the PowerPoint that Shannon will send, or the PDF that Shannon will send out that links to all these forms. But again, those forms help facilitate the communication process of this is what I want to do and why, and it asks all the questions we need to kind of minimize back and forth to make sure we get it done as quickly as we can for you.
And just as an earworm, in case you don't ever look at these PDFs ever again, or I understand we have a lot of people who seem to collect the PDFs. I don't know if they're ever looked at again, but you can always just do CSU OSP forms and look to see how many forms and different forms that we have on our website. So even if you don't bookmark our website, which I would suggest if you have a sponsored project, bookmark OSP's website. And we have a tab called Forms, and there's a lot of really good information in there.
So that we have kind of 3 different buckets here. We have the technical program officer, we have the grants contracting officer, and your OSP team. I'm just going to call them the OSP team. There's multiple people in that team, but it's the team. So the technical and program officer, the PI really is the person that's going to contact the technical program officer. This is the person that is the scientific expert on the whole award. They usually help guide proposals through the merit review and selection process. They really are that resource for the scientific questions. So again, that would be the PI. The PI and the technical program officer are usually in pretty good communication throughout the life of an. The grants and contracting officer at the sponsoring agency is the person that is responsible for the awarding agreement from the agency. They administer the award through the whole life of the award, so from pre-award to closeout. They will answer questions about prior approval for requirements, and they are the only ones authorized to make changes or modifications to the agreement or the award. And this should be, these individuals should only be contacted by the Office of Sponsored Programs, and that is because our office is the authorized representative, authorized organizational representative, AOR. And so we are the only ones, our office is the only one authorized to request the changes and agree to the changes. So again, the technical program officer is often in collaboration with the grants and contracting officer to say, yeah, this technically, the scientific reason makes sense. Yes, let's let them shuffle their budget. Or, the other way around, they want to shuffle their budget and the technical program officer would be like, no, that makes 0 sense to me based on the reports that I can get. They talk. But at the end of the day, the grants and contracting officer is the only one authorized to make those changes and approve any changes. And then your OSP team, they are responsible for negotiating the terms and conditions as well as accepting the award or any modifications. They can answer questions about prior approvals. So Prior approvals are a little funky. Every agency, I think, does them differently. Some have systems that the PI has to initiate. Some have systems that anybody can initiate. Some it's just an email. There's a lot of different ways. So if you don't know how to, I take this back. Even if you know how to submit the prior approval request, our office, the Office of Sponsored Programs, will be involved in it at some point. So it's best just to communicate with your OSP team that this is coming or you want to do this. And that way, again, it helps just move things smoothly and quickly when we already know something's coming. And then the OSP team also prepares the required financial reports throughout the life cycle of the awards. I don't know that most PIs know, and I don't think most PIs really necessarily need to know, but there are requirements for financial reporting through the life of an award. And so that is done by the Office of Sponsored Programs, and it can be as often as quarterly, and it can get pretty intense sometimes. But again, it's just taken care of behind the scenes, and hopefully you didn't even know they were required, and you never have to worry about them because the team just takes care of them. So who should contact the OSP team? The PI can totally reach out to the OSP team. The department support can reach out to the team. We are here to talk to you and help you. And so please don't hesitate to reach out. And again, at the bottom, you'll see that all of these people collaborate and work together. So Office of Sponsored Programs will talk to the technical person if we have a kind of more scientific question that was filtered through us, the grant and contracting officer, if we have that contracting stuff. We all just talk back and forth as needed because we know who the appropriate person is to say yes to certain things. So we want to make sure we get the right yes, because a financial modification from the technical person that has never gone through the grants person means it didn't happen. And we know that. And so we'll go back and make sure it's good through the grants and contracting officer. Because we know the technical and program officer doesn't have the authority to do that. So again, this is that part of that forwarding communications you have. If we have approval, or if you have approval from your technical program officer for a change, it does help usually facilitate us requesting it from the grants and contracting officer, because they can see that the technical program officer has already been looped in and they're in agreement. So sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. But again, just having that information helps us get things quicker. And quicker is a relative term. I just want to clarify. It still takes time.
But communication is definitely the key in award management, especially if everything's on autopilot and you never have to, that's great. But I've rarely been involved in a project that was completely on autopilot for the entire time. So communicate, communicate, communicate. Okay, so some ways to finish wrong. We like to go through the not so great examples before we get to the great examples. So within those last 90 days is really what we consider that pretty much the closeout period. Closeout starts the first day you start spending. Closeout is going from the get-go, but really that last 90 days is kind of that final cleanup, that final push to get everything wrapped up. So unspent balances. You can't use it to restock materials and supplies. Again, we've talked about allowability and allocability. If you use supplies all through the life of the project for the award and they just happen to be leftover or whatever, you can't restock that leftover now from your award. It needed to be used during the life of the award. Replacing equipment or requesting an NCE just to spend out funds. So no cost extensions are not just so you have more time to spend money. No cost extensions are you need more time to complete the scope of work. It may cost you some money to complete the scope of work, but that is not the rationale or the reason for your no cost extension, is because you need more time to complete the scope of work. Requesting no cost extensions late. Most agencies within their terms and conditions have a deadline for when no cost extensions are required. It varies by agency. Some are fast, like as close as 30 days. Some require 90 days. There's stuff in between. So really make sure you know what your agency is, what their requirements are. And as a reminder that sponsors do not have to grant untimely requests. So if their requirement is 30 days and you submitted at 29 days, they can say no. They can say no at 30 days too, but it's that 1 day can really make a difference.
Unresponsive subrecipients with and late final invoices. So as I told you earlier, that we do have a contract with all of our subawards. It is a contractual agreement, and in that we have a date that we need our subaward invoices, the last subaward invoice by, and that date is set in order so that CSU can close out timely as well. So if they're late or they're not responding to you on technical stuff and the financial stuff, it can really create havoc for you closing out your award, as well as that relationship with the subaward entity. And then within that, contact your OSP team early if you're having any problems with your subs. We do not like to see that you have approved every subaward invoice up to the last few and then all the last ones, like, I haven't heard from them in 2 years. Like, every time you approved a subaward invoice, you basically said, yep, they're doing what I expect them to do. They're moving on track. These expenses seem reasonable for what they've been doing. Puts us in a really tough, us as CSU puts us in a really tough place. So please make sure that you're communicating early if you start to see if you're starting to have issues with your subs. We are here to help support you with that. It is not something that you need to take on. We basically have communications with their OSP team, their sponsor programs team, and our sponsor programs team talk. So it's not really PI to PI. So that personal relationship, the hope is not to damage that personal relationship. Unless you want it damaged, then we can do that too. But that's not our goal. So not submitting timely technical reports. Again, those will just cause issues throughout the life of the project if you're not submitting them timely. And then work in progress. If you had any work in progress on your award, you built a piece of equipment or you fabricated something, that needs to be capitalized before the project can be closed out. So really make sure that that gets taken care of. Everything must be completed before a project can be closed out. So there's a lot of little things to do that can cause delays in getting your award closed out. And again, a delay in closeout does not help with future funding if your reports are late or anything else like that. So these are some things to be on the lookout for as you're finalizing those last 90 days. How to finish strong. So again, no cost extension. If you know you need one and you're at, the pre-award team would kill me for saying this, but if you know at 6 months you need one, put in your request. Like, it's technically, it's too early, we can't submit it. But I would rather you guys know that you need it and that it's on the queue and it's in the list. Honestly, they're going to kill me. 90 days is really the better time frame. But it just, if you know, then let's just put it on the radar and let's get going on it. Is all the work complete? So we have a link here to our closeout checklist, which can just be helpful for you to think through things. Not that we need this checklist turned back in or anything, but it really does help you kind of walk through the process and all the little nuances to think about. There's a lot that goes into project closeout. So a part of that, again, is the subawards. Have they completed their work? Have you gotten the deliverables from them? If they owe you a data set for something, then we shouldn't be paying their final invoice till you've received that data set. This is, again, if you approve that final invoice for payment, we're assuming you've received everything that you need to close out the award. And then is all technical reporting complete? You do have some wiggle room on those. It's not due, like if your project ends December 31st, it's not due December 31st, but you generally only have 90 days to kind of get all that stuff finalized. So just be thinking of it and factor it in when you're looking at your calendar and your scheduling. How much time do I need? And that's if you're done with the project, but you need 6 months because life happened to get your technical report done, ask for a no cost extension. That's a valid reason to request more time on the project, is to complete your technical report. And that way it's not going to be late, but you've given yourself the breathing room to get that done. And then retain documents and data as required. So we do have a lot of relatively new kind of data repository requirements and other things. So make sure you're following the terms and conditions of your award. And then, as we've mentioned too, audits can happen at any time during the retention period. Federal awards is 3 years retention. The state of Colorado is 6 years. So, and then some are up to 10 years. for the foundations and things. So we really do, we can be audited at any time. So if you've gone through these checklists and really thought through everything, have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, when audit time comes, you will probably be informed that it's happening, but that hopefully will be all you ever hear. And my team can take care of it from then because we'll have everything we need. Did I miss on that one, Shannon?
No, I was just thinking about, we did have one project, and I don't remember, maybe it was more than multiples, but didn't they have like a retention period of something crazy, like 20 plus years on one of them? It was some crazy, like, I want to say a DoD project of some sort, or
It's possible.
no.
Any capital construction that we've done through NIH, we have a 20-year reporting period after the construction that we have to report on it. So
basically what we're talking about is, and we have this snake that eats its tail. And the reason why we've decided on the snake that eats its tail is that we want you to be thinking about learning from. And we can learn from the things that go really, really well, but you know, we're humans. Sometimes we learn best about the things that we don't do well. So when we talk about team dynamics, I say this a lot because I saw a lot of team dynamics that sometimes did not work. And then I saw people going back to those teams over and over and over again, and that team dynamic never changed. And it's like, we need to learn from that. We need to learn that, you know, this person is always going to be late. This person is not going to answer their emails, etc. So next time when you propose on a project, find someone else to team up with. But, you know, look at what worked, what didn't work. Know about your roles and responsibilities. Know what you need to do and what someone else needs to. You know, and know your federal sponsor. If you work with a federal sponsor on a regular basis, you should become an expert on that federal sponsor. Go and read their guides. They all have them. Sign up for listservs for each of those sponsors. Find out, you know, from your program managers when you go to conferences or places. Go meet with people, but become an expert on that. So that's a strategic part of proposing in general, is just learning from what works. But also, if you have mentors, talk to them about things, about what works for them, and lean on that experience. And then, you know, who do we contact? So we have 6 teams here at OSP, and each of these 6 teams has a portfolio. So they have, they've been divvied up by colleges generally, but also some units and some departments, onesies and twosies here and there. So we have the 6 teams here at OSP. We have their portfolios on our website. And again, we have the URL here on, if you need to go and take a look at that, or if you're not sure who your team is, you can go and look to see whose team. But I want to thank everybody for coming today. And again, we have some case studies and some other things at the bottom. But I'll stay here for a second if anyone has any questions.